gorgeous Georgian goes. MMA Junkie Radio. We're blowing it up here at the Virgin Hotel at SeaCon. Our next guest is former Strikeforce and UFC bantamweight champion. And Miesha, I'm going to put it into the universe, future Hall of Famer, Miesha Tate. What's going on, Miesha? How are you? Great to see you.
Yeah, this is good. It's great to see you guys. It's been a minute. We were just talking. The last time you were still at the Mandalay Bay. I mean, life has changed. Mm-hmm. Yeah, my kids are 6 and 4 now. It's crazy. Yeah.
Well, I remember one time we had to actually, I had to play babysitter with your daughter, I believe, because we had that rule at the Mandalay Bay, 21 and over. And she was a toddler at the time. What's she gonna do? Hit a progressive or make a bet? Like seriously,
push a button.
But it was so strict that when Miesha went into the studio to do the interview, I'm pushing the stroller around till Johnny showed up and rescued us. But it has been a while. You look great, and it's always great to have you on. And what did you think when I said that? UFC Hall of Fame. How much would that mean to you to put a capstone on such an outstanding career?
No, it would be a huge honor. I mean, not everybody gets that opportunity, and not everybody gets the opportunities that I've already had. So either way, I'll be grateful. But, to be inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame is kind of like cementing the legacy. Mm-hmm. It really kind of puts you in a different category of appreciation. So, I would be grateful, of course.
You got the skins on your wall. You've got the belts, right? So you can get in on the accolades alone. But one thing that makes your career so special is I also consider you kind of a pioneer that brought the sport and helped blow it up. Do you see it the same way as well? I mean, that's a different type of contribution.
I think that's fair to say. I didn't see it at the time, but of course, looking back in hindsight, I think I can look at it and say, hey, I was a part of that forefront, I mean, there were women that came before me that I looked up to, not very many. There was a few. Mm-hmm. But I think what really got the attention of the masses was obviously the fight in Strikeforce between Ronda and myself. And it's so cool to look back and know the impact that had and the motion that set forth bringing women to the UFC. And just knowing that, I might not have been the heavy hitter, but I was part of that. I was in that moment there, and it was great.
Mm-hmm. So the good times and the bad times, right? Because there's a lot of ups and downs in our sport. How often do you revisit them? Sometimes we'll hear people say daily at some point these memories go into our heads. What about for you? Because I know you to be a very upbeat person, and you have so much going on outside of mixed martial arts, but how many times do these things pop into your head daily?
I wouldn't say it's a daily occurrence for me, because for the most part I've worked on really letting things go that would fill or occupy space in my head, because I have more important stuff to worry about than all the things in the past. But sometimes I sit and I look back when I have these conversations with like you guys, or I something reminds me or cross my mind, and a lot of times it's more of gratitude. I'm so grateful. I'm still grateful for the relationship that I had with Ronda, because it really elevated my career. It brought women's MMA to a whole new level. And so I think not everybody gets an opportunity to have somebody stand across the way from them who is going to build a story with you. And it was very authentic and genuine. We just really didn't like each other. But now I sit back and I look at it and I'm just like, I'm so grateful, and I can just let it go in a way that these things are just positive for me, and I don't have to sit back and be bitter about it. Wish her all the best. She's a mom now too, so.
Yeah. Oh, I was going to ask you, in the 80s, a lot of these boxers that would face each other, Sugar Ray Leonard and Marvin Hagler didn't talk for a very long time, but they shared a really big spotlight. Do you think one day you could just sit down and, whether you guys have a glass of wine, a beer, a soda, whatever, and just kind of relive, it was a big part of the sport, but on a friendly side?
I think I could be capable of that. I just don't know how she feels about it. It would take 50-50-50. I have a very heavy appreciation for Ronda in my life, and she's also done some great things, I think, beyond that. I think we're actually, in some ways, we're a lot alike, I think, and in other ways we're very, very different. And I think it was the differences that really, where we clashed a lot. Coming in, and we just saw things so differently. But now that we're in a second part of our life, the fact that she's farming, and like I think she has a ranch, and she does these things. So eventually I want to homestead, and I want to homeschool my kids, and I want to have this kind of, I don't know if she homeschools, but it seems like, they think that I've heard that they have presence at farmers markets and things. And I'm like, that's so interesting that my biggest foe and rival would have the similar interest of, what I kind of want is I want space. I want to move to like Boise, and I want to have acreage, and I want to have maybe a milking cow or some goats, definitely chickens. I've already got chickens, I've already kind of started. I've definitely opened the floodgates. That's kind of like the gateway. It's like when you get chickens, you're on a certain trajectory, and that's, where I'm at. So we have some similarities, but we still have big differences too. I know recently she had some reflective moments on her career, and I just disagree with a lot of that. I have my own opinions on it.
I also wanted to chime in on that because I saw an interview that you did, and you brought up such great points. And look, I'm not going to mince any words. She just hasn't grown up, and you have. I mean, actually, you've been mature kind of this whole time, but you said something like, hey, look, you seem to have these bitter feelings towards the sport, but you forgot. A lot of girls looked up to you. I read that you said that. And they would have been your fans no matter what. And it seems like her career hinged so much on the wins only, not the wins and losses. And yet, losses can make you better. They can humble you. They can make you hungrier. They can do so much, But it's so true. Like, she kind of just turned her back on all those little girls that looked up to her and would have been, that was the key part, they still would have been her fan even during the losses.
Yeah, and I think as I look at it now as a mother, and I realize that those little girls, and I also believe little boys too, were looking up to females as icons, which is such a, like, it's a mind-blowing thing for me. When somebody walks up to me and tells me like, hey, my son looks up to you, I'm like, that's crazy, because I never even had female role models. I didn't have female role models growing up in the sport that I wanted to do as a young girl, wrestling and coming into MMA. And then to think that the line that used to be set of, what is acceptable for what, for females are in this role and males are in this role and women don't fight. And now it's like little boys that can kind of look up to women and be like, oh, she's badass. I'd love to be badass too. It's pretty cool. But, I think that there were young girls and boys and men and women who looked up and loved Ronda and were still there to see how she was going to handle the loss, and they still had like the love and respect for her, because at the end of the day we know everybody's going to lose at some point. It's just a matter of time. I know that she was saying she would retire undefeated, but easier said than done. And these people were looking to her, and especially the young ones, to see like, how do you handle a loss? And they had love for her no matter what.
Yeah. A lot of people loved her, no matter wins or losses. It's just part of the game. And I just feel like, I take it a little personal because she blames media. We just call balls and strikes. Mm-hmm. The unfortunate thing is, if you're a basketball player and you go 0 for 11, you suck that night, right?
Yeah.
Well, if you have a night where you got pasted, you didn't even get one in, and somebody got ragdoll, all we can say is you got your ass kicked, But it doesn't mean you're not a great fighter. It just wasn't your night, but it's an edgy sport. We say things the way we see them. She didn't take that well, but she didn't listen to the many times we said great things about her.
Right.
But you know what? And you're here. She's not. Oh, go ahead.
There was just a million times when I feel like that was the case, where media there wasn't enough great things to say. Like, you wouldn't even have enough time to say all the great things that she had accomplished in the sport. It would take forever. She's a great competitor. She was a great athlete. She's done many great things. But I just think she let the negativity overshadow so much of the positivity. And I think that is a lack of self-reflection. And, she's more focused on self than she is on self-growth. And I think, it's just unfortunate to see that, she's still kind of living with that bitterness, because I think life is too short. It's meant to be enjoyed. And I don't think that she's come to understand, I think, the way that we did. She just takes everything very personally, and she's kind of stuck in that moment, and that's unfortunate.
I want to focus on you and that great moment versus Holly Holm. I'm not joking here. I still get goosebumps when I see it. If it's at the right time with a couple of drinks, man, I mean, like, that is the ultimate teaching moment for your kids growing up, to never give up, How often do you think about it when you see it as a highlight or when someone brings it up to you?
It still gives me chills. I think I have chills right now, because I think about how much it took for me to get to that moment. And people will see the little short story, but they won't necessarily know the battles that, internally, emotionally, mentally, that it takes to get to that point, and then to have it work out and persevere. Because there's moments that would happen similar for like Joseph Benavidez. You know, I always think like, God, he was just so close so many times. It feels like he should have been a champion and it would have been the perfect ending, but it just
I
didn't
thought
work
he'd be
out that way.
Dominic Cruz in the second one, personally.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, where it was just, he was so close and he never did get that crowning moment. So I'm so grateful that I was able to make it happen because, I mean, you never know. That's why we fight, because it's so crazy and wild and it's never guaranteed. So to have that moment is still something that's like, it's mind blowing to me that I was able to get there. But I still think, even in that fight, I think I was far from my best. Yeah. I think I was too focused on like winning as opposed to being my best. And I would say my last fight was the first fight where I had a whole mental shift. And then I said, you know what? I think I had a whole epiphany. I'm no longer outcome based. I'm effort based. So that means I'm not going to hold myself back for an outcome. So I'm not going to show up and just do enough to win. I'm going to literally show up and try to be the best I can ever be. And that might mean I lose. I'm okay with that, actually. I was never okay with that before. I was like, I would just have to win. So if I was like on top, it's like, cool, we're just going to stay here, not going to take a lot of chances, stay here. Now I'm like, no, I literally want to be the best. I literally want to dominate in every single position. And I don't care if that means that I don't win. Because at the end of the day, there's one question I have left for myself. It's like, how good can I be? How great can I be? And I don't want to hold myself back. You know, we're getting to the closing chapter for sure, towards the end of that, where I'm not going to have that many more fights. So what's the purpose of doing this if I'm not going to discover like the absolute limit? And really, that's a moving line. You know, it's always moving if you're chasing it, if you're pushing it.
If this were a book, what would be the title of that chapter?
Oh, goes coming with all the good questions. With the title of that chapter, I think it would maybe be like the fight within. The fight within, because that's really what it was. Is more of battling myself than battling any person that stood in front of me. And once you can kind of get to a place of, like it's like a spiritual comfortability where you realize that there's so much more to life than just as simple as winning and losing, and you just want to go beyond that and above that and be more than just defined by that, which is what I was very tied to. And I think a lot of athletes, if you've ever seen The Weight of Gold, it's a really good documentary. I highly suggest watching it. It's about Olympic athletes and how they put their whole life into this career, and then afterwards it's like nobody cares, and they kind of like, what happens after that? Nobody really follows it that much unless you win gold, you know. But even a silver medalist, you know, which sometimes can be like so close, but it's like, well, you was silver, we only care about gold. Well, when we raise our kids to think like that, or we allow ourselves to become, then we're only as good as our last win or our last loss. When I won, I was a winner. When I lost, I was a loser. And that was not a good way to go through your life, because it can make you feel suicidal at times. It can make you feel addicted to the sport in a way that's like, look, I lost my last one. The only way to fix it is through a win. Well, that's very short-sighted, because what if you don't get a win on your next one? What if you're burying yourself? What if you're digging a hole? What if you're burning the candle at both ends and the middle? You know, and eventually you're going to burn out, you know. And this is where I think athletes get the sort of mental illness, if you will, or the depression or these suicidal tendencies at times, because we throw ourselves so hard into the outcome, and we forget that it's more about the effort than it is about the outcome. But we you know, as a society, don't really embrace that kind of thinking. So it's going to take a little bit of a cultural shift, because if I could put that out there for a few people that are doing sports, or just even to understand that there's more to it. There's more to life. There's a life after sports. You know, you've got to learn to have a little bit of balance so that we can have our worthiness, I guess, our greatness within ourselves, as opposed to just like the sport.
Did you have those thoughts as well after losses?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
How did you overcome them?
Well, for a long time, it was just like, I just got to fight again. That was the only way that I could solve a loss, was to get a win. And it was just short-sighted. And then when I lost 2 times in a row, and I realized that I didn't have the energy that I had before to try to fix the problem, that I realized that the trajectory was a sharp down. It was a sharp decline. I honestly barely had what it took to win the fight against Holly. I was already on my downward trajectory. Even though I won that fight, I was already going down. And then I lost the fight to Amanda. Then I lost the fight to Raquel. And I was like, guys, like in my head, I'm talking to myself, this is not working. This is not good. And I don't like the way that I feel when I'm fighting anymore. I felt like it was like an out-of-body experience. I had separated myself in so many ways because I was trying to compartmentalize to hold it together enough to get through another fight. And I think when you do that, you just slowly start to disassociate with anything that you are more than just fighting. So when I had lost those two things, and I was like, I have to retire because I've got to figure something out, because if not, I don't think I could handle another loss. I don't think I could have stomached it myself. So
what would be your advice to fighters? Many that probably look up to you, especially female, but I mean, any fighter. I guess, was the UFC a resource? Your husband, family? How did you overcome this?
Well, I think, yes, connection with family was huge for me. So I was in I would say a very mentally abusive relationship, and it was pretty toxic. Although by the time my last fight rolled around, I had exited the relationship. But anyways, still moving out of that and trying to move through that was very difficult. And I had sort of isolated myself a lot from a lot of the support system that I would, and it kind of comes with the territory sometimes when you get with somebody who doesn't necessarily want you to have that support system, or doesn't feel like they want you to have that. And then reaching back out and connecting with those people, that's a huge advantage when you're trying to get through something emotionally tough. Getting through it on your own is so much harder. But it had to start from me, because people had told me for a really long time. They had given me advice. They had said, I don't know, this doesn't seem right for you. They'd tried to be there. I wasn't ready to receive the information. So it had to start from me. But I hit rock bottom, and it was like there was a little pinhole of light in a dark room. And I was like, I don't like the trajectory of this. And it wasn't that I didn't want to live. It was like I didn't want to live like this anymore. So I had to change it, or else I was scared that there might come a moment where it was like impulsive, and it's like, I don't want to live anymore. It's like, no. I need to fix my environment so that I can thrive again, because I do want to live. I do want to be here. I just don't want to be here like this. So it's like this little tiny light. That's what I describe it like. And you're just running towards that, and you don't know what's over there, but it's the only chance you've got. And that's kind of what it was. It was like hitting that rock bottom, retiring, being so afraid to not be who I was at the time. I was just a fighter. I was nothing else. I knew nothing else. And so to walk away from it all and kind of leave everything hanging to sort itself out was really scary, but it was very necessary.
Thanks for opening up and sharing about that. Obviously, in mixed martial arts, we've had mutual friends that have gone down that path. So I think it's important to, when you hear about it, talk about it. So I thank you for answering those questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I lost Robert Fallis like that too, my coach.
And Coach Tim Lane as well.
Yep, Tim Lane.
And then other fighters as well that have, I guess thought it was too much to overcome, but maybe by talking to someone, it starts the process, right? And then all of a sudden you get the right help, and then look at the great life you have now with your two kids, your husband. You still have fights left. When's your next one, by the way? Because I looked. I still don't see you matched up with anyone.
I want to try to fight before the end of the year. Okay. So we're just working on that. Sphere's too soon. Yeah. And again, as cool opportunity as that is, those things just don't matter to me anymore. Okay. Like some people are like, oh, I really want this. And I've been there. Like, I want to fight at MGM. I thought it was so cool to fight in the Saitama Arena. Now it's just like, man, I'm cool with whatever. Like, life is good. Life is great. And at the end of the day, win, lose, draw, I'm still wake up tomorrow exactly who I am, with my kids, my family, all the things that I've kind of built to help me not be tied so much to the win or the loss. So talking to somebody is one part of it, but I also think like talking to yourself. So sometimes we forget to like have an inner dialogue. We just close the door on it. We shove the beach ball into the water. It's like we do whatever we can to just not address the internal dialogue. Like, you got to start to talk to yourself a little bit and figure out why, so that you can figure out how. And when you start figuring out why and how, you can talk to someone else about it too and say, hey, this is what I think I'm going through, you know. I think a big part of this mental shift for me too, not in my darkest moments, but in the year that I kind of had after I lost to Lauren Murphy, and then I came back, and I think I had the best performance of my career, at least inside my head and my heart. It felt very connected. Was talking to Micah, who's a cognitive behavioral therapist, so CBT. I think those are people who have that style is great, because I had talked to therapists before, but a lot of them were talk therapists, and then they just kind of want to like keep talking about like the same stuff, and it kind of keeps bringing up the same trauma, and I'm like, okay, but where's like the solution or the end? Like, are we just going to keep talking about it, you know? So I think with Micah, what was so great is it's about performance. But a lot of this transferred over into my life. So if anybody's looking for a specific kind of therapist, I would recommend that.
My last question is, and I'm not showing you out the door, I know you still got fights left, but obviously you've been a colleague of ours on SiriusXM. We've seen you address a group at a gymnasium when we did the military trip, self-defense for women. You speak very, very well behind the mic, whether it's just talking to people, a sensitive subject like we just touched on right now, or the X's and O's of combat sports. I would love to see you do what Laura Sanko does as well at some point, or whether it's the desk, how Karen and the others hold it down, but I think the X's and O's, because I've heard you back in the days at Invicta. Is that of interest to you?
It could be. So I worked on the Fox desk, the pre and where you talk about with Karen Bryan, the
Like the host desk or whatever.
Yeah. And it's a lot of work. I have so much respect for them to be able to talk about fighters at a whim. I unfortunately do not have an encyclopedia for a brain. Like some people, like Michael Chiesa, my buddy from Washington, we kind of grew up together in the sport. I mean, he could just like pull out statistics and facts about a fighter at any moment. Like it's just like he carries that around with him. I don't know if it's because I have like kids or maybe I've gotten hit more than him. I don't know. But I am not that person. I have to refresh every single fight. I don't necessarily put all those statistics away in my brain. So it's a lot of work for me, and it's a lot of hours. If you're going to be serious about it, like traveling to all the events and things like that. So, just seeing someone there on the mic, you're like, oh, that's awesome. Maybe I'd want to do that. And then you get behind it and you're like, oh my God, it's way more work than you would think. So it's probably not the direction that I'm going to go for. But
not even at the broadcast table describing the action, like this is how he or she gets out of a guillotine or...
Yeah, but potentially I could do some of that, but I wouldn't want to be at every fight. Like I wouldn't want to have to travel. I wouldn't want to have to, have that regularity. I like being a bit of a free spirit and a free bird, so I could see myself.
You want to get to that ranch in Boise, don't you?
I want to get to that ranch in Boise and then take the jobs that I want to take, and that would be ideal. So that's kind of really what I'm fighting for at this point, is trying to, just wrap up the career, find the very best in me. And honestly, I could say after this last performance, I feel like I found it in that fight. So if I never did fight again, I would be very happy with that close for me personally, because
really? Okay.
how I felt in my heart and in my mind that there was going to be no limitation on my capability and just go for it as hard as I could. I was really happy with that. I'd like to build upon that because I still think there's more to be uncovered. I was really happy with that step.
I want to thank you so much for stopping by the MMA Junkie Radio Show. We've missed you. And hopefully we can do it again soon, whether it's for your next fight or to talk about the retirement or whatever, It sounds like you have options, but as always, we appreciate your time. And say hello to your kids for us.
I will.
And we'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Take care.
It's Miesha Tate, former Strikeforce and UFC bantamweight champion, and definitely one of the pioneers of the sport, deserves to be in the Hall of Fame one day.